Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to present here, and thanks a lot for also the other presenters today because we've been managing the time quite well, I think. So I'll try to stick into the time appropriately for that. Right. So Open Cosmos. Well, first of all, I am Daniel Source, head of customer success, and I'm gonna briefly run through who we are and basically the software and hardware tools that we've been developing to support all kind of technologies to be qualified and ready to space, and then obviously to be sent to space. So a bit about us. We are an SMP and a space mission provider. This means that we provide full space missions from early stages, early design phases until the very end, until the commissioning. And I'm going to go through a bit the whole mission process and a bit the process that we have in place. But our main objective is to make space accessible to help solve the world's biggest challenges. And we do so by simplifying the technologies, the processes involved in a space mission. The objective is to simplify access to space. A quick slide here to put us in contact with new space and this Space 4.0 with a clear analogy between the computing industry and the space sector nowadays. So on the top here, you see the computers like maybe 50, 60 years ago. They were very big, very expensive, and only available to top research institutions until a few smart guys gathered together in a garage in Silicon Valley, and they managed to simplify and make all these computing capabilities available to a broader audience. And the results, we carry the results of all this in our pockets nowadays. They simplify these applications, they simplify our daily lives, and they improve a bit the world we live in. So with the space sector, we are experiencing this evolution as well. We used to come from an industry with big satellites, complex systems, very expensive test facilities, big rockets, and so on, only available to top research institutions. And right now, with companies like us, we are a main player in this new space ecosystem in which we simplify these technologies, we reduce them, we make them simple and much more affordable to allow a whole set of new applications to use space as a tool. So we are a company based in UK, in the Harwell Space campus. It's where we have our main offices, the lab, the clean room, and so on. We are around 60 people from more than 15 countries now, and we have already launched a satellite, and we have 8 more in the pipeline to be launched in the next months or in the next year or two ahead of us. So in this slide, just to highlight the exercise we did at the beginning, the company is 4.5 years old, more or less now. And since the very beginning, we spot the 3 main burdens, the 3 main problems or entry barriers to the space industry, which are complex technology. Obviously, space is hard due to the environmental conditions up there, of course. But there is also bureaucratic and all the regulation aspects of it, such as frequency allocation, export control, ITAR regulations, insurance, and so on and so forth, that cause some time delay sometimes and obviously some resources to be spent. The last bit is regarding the costs, that it's quite expensive, even still nowadays, to enter the space sector, but these costs are being reduced with, especially now, the launch segment that is evolving quite fast. So we've been solving these 3 main problems that I was mentioning. I'm going to focus in this presentation with the first one, which is the technology. I'm going to show basically the software and the hardware tools that we've been developing and working to simplify this process of developing a space mission. But just to highlight on the paperwork aspect of things, the partnership we have with the ground segment, with the launch segment, and also we are working closely with the main regulatory bodies worldwide. We have close collaboration with the UK Space Agency, with ESA, and so on and so forth. So we do this on behalf of our customers to simplify also this bureaucratic aspect of the space missions. And then just the last bit is just to show that we break down an order of magnitude more or less of the normal cost of a space missions, from tens of millions to millions, or from millions to hundreds of thousands, if you want to see it like that obviously depends on the satellite sizes, requirements of the particular mission, so on and so forth. But that's a bit in a nutshell. Normally the time it's linked to the cost. It's really linked to the time. So the less cost, the less time, the less cost normally involved in a space mission. So as I was mentioning, I'm going to focus with the first aspect, with the technological aspects of it, and because the main idea is to provide this set of tools, platforms that I'm going to quickly go through to make space accessible to everyone. Just before we jump into more specific the software and the hardware tools, just to show you a bit the mission processes that we follow. In the top, you see normally the core work of our standard customers or even suppliers. They normally have a payload, a subsystem that can be an instrument, an experiment, a sensor that they want to launch to space, and then they have the data that they are supposed to retrieve once up there in orbit. The rest, as you see in the bottom, we make it happen. So we want the customers, the suppliers, to stay laser focused on their key technologies, and we take care of the rest. So in the bottom, you see a bit the stages of our standard missions. Normally for phase 0A, we have a set of software tools that I'll show quickly inside OpenApp. OpenApp is an online software platform that we developed at OpenCosmos, and it's very useful through the different stages of a space mission. So there are different modules. I'm going to highlight them later, but basically for first phases, we have a mission system and design and analysis tools that allow to do this first analysis of your potential satellite mission. Then naturally, normally, there is a hardware involved, and it's when we provide the OpenKit, the satellite qualification platform. This platform is very powerful. I'm going to give more details later on, but it's very powerful to start qualifying, integrating and qualifying technologies to allow the next step, which is a real satellite integration, and basically we take care of the whole process, which means the full test campaign, launching operations, and all the paperwork associated with it. So at the end, the end user can also use OpenApp to get all the data and operate the payload or the subsystems or the instruments, the sensors, the experiments once they are in a space. So OpenApp, you'll see that covers pretty much, supports the whole process in a space mission. So let's jump a bit into the software and the hardware tools, as I was mentioning, that we managed to simplify as maximum as possible to make it accessible and affordable to everyone. So as I introduced before, this is a bit of a glimpse of OpenApp. I'm going to touch base on the software with OpenApp and then on the hardware with OpenKit. So regarding OpenApp, it's an online software platform. You just need a web browser. You don't need to install any software packages. It's everything in the cloud. So that allows basically with any computer to access all these high processing capabilities and simulations that you will see now. You can literally, I'm going to share the link later on, but you can literally go to this link and sign up directly. So you can have a bit of an overview of all the modules I'm going to be running through. So OpenApp, as I mentioned, has different modules depending on which mission phase we are talking about. In the first stages of a mission, it's what we call the mission design, and there are a set of tools, as you can see here. First tool is the payload. That's normally what you start thinking at the beginning, which is the core of a space mission, which kind of sensor, which kind of instrument, which kind of sensor, parameters you want to exploit, you want to monitor, and then you go from left to right following all these processes that you see here. So I'm going to jump quickly to each of the tools so you have a bit of an overview of how they look like and what you can do with them. In the first one, as I mentioned, in the payload, it's where you can choose from a set of already available payloads, or you can specify the one you are working on in terms of thermal constraints, the physical constraints, dimensions, power requirements, payload modes in terms of pointing, and so on and so forth. Then once this is completed and you've selected payload or a set of payloads, then you can move to the mission geometry. Here is where you can set up your points of interest, your regions of interest, perhaps, where you want to trigger different payload modes. You can define constellations, you can define as many orbits as you want, you can define a start time and the number of time or days or weeks that you want to run your simulation. And at the end, you get all these outputs, which helps you to monitor all kind of parameters related to your space mission. Here you see some of the plots, but yeah, there are many features here. One of them actually is to generate a report automatically. So you can generate in a PDF, select the content that you want in the PDF and download it straight. All these data points, you can also download them in a CSV, so you can export them in an Excel or whatever other software you use to monitor and analyze the data into more detail. So this is done in a very dynamic way. I have to mention this is a beta version of OpenApp. We come from the previous product, BApp. So this is still work in progress, but we are planning to do a major release now in a couple of weeks' time in Easter. So these are already some of the functionalities and the graphs that you can obtain from it. Then the next natural step is the ground segment to choose the antennas that you want to use for your space mission. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but essentially you can pick a set of ground stations and analyze the visibility and do some link budget studies with it. The last one is the platform to close all the configuration of your satellite. You see that the circles, they turn red as soon as you start completing all the required information. So at the end, you can just pick from the platform side, the size, the deployables, the particular subsystems that you want to use, and run simulations over it. And we are considering, we are already developed, but we are considering implementing, hopefully in the future, or perhaps by summertime, these optimization processes that will pre-select all these things for you and suggest the best configuration for your particular mission depending on your requirements. Right, so the second module is the hardware in the loop. Here is where we plug literally the hardware into the software. We interface with it directly through a USB cable, you'll see later on. But essentially, in the hardware in the loop, you can launch all these mission scenarios into the hardware. So the payloads or the subsystems that you connect into the hardware, they perceive the same performance in terms of power, in terms of data, as if it was in that particular mission scenario that you simulate in these first modules. So a bit of a glimpse, this is still work in progress, but essentially, it allows you to fake positions if you want, to launch these scenarios that I mentioned, codes, deploy the software, the scripts to operate your payloads or your subsystems, monitor them, execute commands, and so on and so forth. Right, and just the last bit, the last module is the operations module. Here is where I mentioned that once the payload, the subsystem is integrated into the satellite, then you're going to start conducting the final tests. And obviously, once it's in orbit, you can operate your payload, receive the data, schedule passes, commands to be sent to the satellite to operate the payload, receive data, and so on and so forth. So this is the last module that a big part of our technical team is working on right now for the missions that we have ahead. So I'm jumping quickly to the hardware, the OpenKit. It has the same structure as our real satellite, so it's a space-graded hardware, the one that you see here, exactly the same structures, and the harness that we provide is space-graded, so this means that you can conduct environmental tests. You can put the kits in the TVAC tests, vacuum thermal test campaigns, vibration shock, and so on. So with OpenKit, what we are doing is de-risking the payloads when they are, or the subsystems when they are integrated. So the users, they can test as much as they want with the conditions as close as possible to the reality. So through the power and the data interfaces, as I mentioned, we can launch realistic scenarios. So with the electronic box that you see here, we simulate all the subsystems and the performance of the real satellite, basically in a nutshell. We ship them straight away. The idea is that once the payloads and subsystems are integrated, we get them back, and then we can integrate the systems to the satellite that can be manufactured in parallel even. So this way we reduce time to orbit. That's a bit how it looks. Perhaps as you can see, it's directly connected through a USB, and then the power can go directly to a PSU. And the idea is that through the power and the data interfaces, you have exactly the same connectors, the same harnesses as we use with the real satellites, and you get the same performance as the real satellites. And you probably have seen an image from Jactek in the presentation before. So that's a bit how the big kits, now called with the rebranding open kits, how they look like. So at the end, we can have the missions ready to launch. These are the 3 form factors we work with, 3, 6, and up to 12 units. So the biggest satellite size we work with, it's around a microwave kind of satellite, so a 12-unit CubeSat platform. So just to close, to wrap up, with this software and hardware tools, we want to enable new players to use the space as a tool, and this can be from the research side of things, entrepreneurs, emerging countries, or even industries that have no previous space experience or background, to enable a whole set of new applications. This can be these 3 main verticals that we normally work with. We are payload agnostic, so we are open to integrate all kinds of payloads and subsystems in the verticals of Earth observation, communication, and also research or tech development. These are normally the 3 main areas in the space missions. And just to close, some of the missions we are currently working on with different players, and some of the programs we have also in collaboration with the European Space Agency. And yeah, we're working towards delivering these missions in the next months, and especially at the end of this year and next year. So at the end, we want a world empowered by actionable information from space, and open the access to space with this set of innovative tools and also processes that we have in place. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. Happy to take any questions that might be.
Okay, Daniel. Thank you very much for your nice and clear presentation. Very clear. Then those of you who have questions for Daniel can write them in the chat. I have the first one from Ignacio Bustamante. What are the main differences between OpenUp and BAP? Actually, right, between the open and the BE systems, he says.
Mm-hmm. Very good point. This is just purely the name. So we just changed the name. We upgraded the name. We updated the name. As of now, we have the previous version of BAP and the beta version of OpenUp. And as I mentioned, in a couple of weeks at Easter time, around Easter, we're going to do a major release, which is going to kill the old BAP that probably you've been working on with. So that's purely the name. We're going to migrate to the OpenUp, and BAP and BKit as the names we were using in the past are going to be superseded by OpenKit and OpenUp. So it's purely the name. And regarding the software tools, right now they are the 2 available, and we're going to upgrade to the OpenUp, what you've seen now on screen.
Okay, thanks. Any other question? Well, Daniel, I have a question for you. Imagine that I want to launch a sensor to the space, and I count on you and your management and technology skills. How long it would take, and which would be more or less a range of budget for this management service?
Right. So that's a good question. In terms of time, there are still certain processes that we cannot shorten them. For instance, the frequency regulation aspects of it, that it doesn't take less than 9 months normally, I would say. But that really depends on the pipeline of missions that we have, and maybe there are ways to reduce times. So as a baseline, I would say we are aiming around 10 months, 12 months, maybe for very basic and not very complex missions. This obviously depends a lot on mission requirements, sizes, if there are constellations or not, launch windows ahead and all that. But as a rough order of magnitude, I would say 10, 12 months maybe for a standard, maybe 3-unit mission. And in terms of costs, for a full mission, including absolutely everything, we're talking for a baseline, for instance, for a very basic standard, I would say 3-unit mission of around hundreds of thousands, 500,000 approximately, or things like that. But that really depends on the mission requirements, as I was mentioning, and many things. But just to give you an order of magnitude, hundreds of thousands for a standard, maybe 3-6-unit mission.
Okay, thank you. And the other question I had for you is, nowadays, which are the missions that you are developing? Which is the common or the common aspect or market, or the most interesting applications that these missions are approaching?
Mm-hmm. Right. So as I mentioned, we are payload agnostic. We are open to integrate all kinds of technologies, and that's actually perceived that's really translated into our current missions. So we have missions, IoT missions ahead, basically on the communication side of things, with this Internet of Things, having nodes on Earth that they communicate through our satellites, so they can be deployed in areas where there is no normal communication or no coverage with normal systems. We have some missions such as the Mantis, a 12-unit. That's a much bigger mission or platform with tackling more with Earth observation and imaging. You saw an example also here regarding remote sensing, Earth observation, and so on. And there are some others that's purely tech development. There's a lot, a lot going on in quantum.
I think that's the direction we need to. I mean, there's no alternative, and I mean, nobody.
Sorry.
Nobody knows what the worst scenario should look like. I mean, even for not getting the worst scenario, it's even more important.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Daniel.
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that was a question or if it was just a comment. Or maybe it was another conversation.
I think it was a conversation.
Okay, right. So I hope I answered the questions. Or I answered the last question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Daniel. And thank you, everyone, for attending the webinar.